Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Bleav.
BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, NHL, and UFC. Head to BetOnline today and don't forget to use the promo code BLEAV, B-L-E-A-V, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here.
This is the Bleav in the Warhawks podcast, part of the Bleav Network, with hosts Dusty Thibodeaux
I seem to be the only guy they can find to talk to.
and Chase Regian.
Just offensive line, man. Still not getting credit for shit, and it's cool.
It's a spinoff from Funbelt Podcast, Bleav in the Warhawks. I'm Dusty Thibodeaux of Warhawk Report and Funbelt Podcast. He is Chase Regian, as his title says on the broadcast. A ULM has been a former ULM offensive lineman, sideline reporter for the Warhawk Radio Network.
Yeah.
Chase, welcome into whatever this is going to become.
Thanks, Tibbs. I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited to talk the Warhawks. I'm excited to kind of show just a little bit behind the curtain of what ULM's got going on, and we're going to talk about some great things that they're doing. I'm really excited about them, so I am also excited to be here, bub.
You had the front row seat for football, 5-7. Obviously, not the record we wanted. But I got to be honest, coming into the season, I thought we were maybe a 3-4 win team.
No.
Way exceeding the expectations there of Vegas at putting us at a 1.5 game win.
Yeah, Vegas is.
I don't think
Vegas
other than
sucks
the
for what they
Jackson State game, there weren't a lot of games that I had picked correctly, but I was glad to be wrong. What was your initial take on the season, seeing that we hit that 5-7 mark?
Before we played the first game, I said this is probably if the floor for me for Vincent was 3 wins, 4 wins would be a great season. And after I watched the way his offense played in the first series of the first game, I was like, yeah, this is it. Now, I couldn't make the first game. It was a Thursday night game. I no longer live in Monroe, so it's some of the travel is really hard for me. But I saw that first snap, and yeah, we've got a good offensive line, which I thought before the season we would have a good offensive line, and I thought we would really struggle in other certain ways. And you saw them struggle in some, but really exceed expectations, especially at running back, which we all know, and I'm sure we'll talk about here in a little bit. But yeah, I had us at a good, solid 3-win team. I thought you had Jackson State. I thought JMU was going to beat you by 70. I thought, I thought this was the year, honestly, to beat Arkansas State. I knew Troy was going to suck. They lost way too many people to try to even be good. And I know they turned it on there at the end, but yeah, I thought, and then maybe sneak another one, right? But still, I think that 5 wins in hindsight is a huge year and a huge step forward for ULM.
I think the fans, though, once they jumped out to the 5-1 start, those expectations changed of why can't we be 11-1? And I don't think that this was a team really that was built to go 11-1. I definitely think it was capable of hitting 6-7 wins, but I don't feel that this was the 12-0 flawless season type of team beating Texas, beating Auburn, and everyone in between. But I still feel like there's a lot of pieces that are missing for those last few games to get over the hump. And really, as you said, it's going to hurt replacing probably the biggest part there of Ahmad Hardy. But I think that that's a good recruiting tool that you can show this 18-year-old kid that came out of nowhere, Mississippi, came in and absolutely dominated the Sun Belt.
Yeah.
It took his 25, 28 carries a game, rushed for 100 yards. What was it, 13, 15 touchdowns? All Vincent's got to say is come here and you're going to get the rock.
Yeah, well, his scheme is very, very running back friendly. He does tons of motions, 12 personnel, 13 personnel. He runs the ball at your throat. He runs the ball around you. And Ahmad Hardy was just a great back to be able to do all the above. So I think he was a really good player in a really good system. And I hope he continues to do that. And I wish Ahmad all the best for sure. But, we had 7 offensive linemen we played this year regularly. And, those 7 guys were really, really good. I mean, I don't think if I'm being honest, that Lafayette had the best offensive line in the Sun Belt. And I think they showed that against ULM, but beyond them, we had to be up there, and Marshall was pretty good too. But ULM's offensive line really, and I'm a homer, sure, and I'm an offensive line guy, yeah, and I'll always talk great about them because I think it's a lazy narrative if you don't. But you had very little depth, which is always going to be a hard thing to do at a school like ULM. You have very little depth, injury bug, like the little injuries. We're not talking like ACLs and stuff like that. I'm talking like turf toe, dislocated shoulder, those things that are like nagging that make you play at 70%. That's what ULM had a lot of this year. And with that lack of depth that we had, it really put us in an impossible spot to really hit 7-8 wins. They had the talent, I'm sure. And if I'm being honest, I'm surprised Ahmad stayed as healthy as he did through that many carries. Is so hard to do through 12 games. And I mean, he really, again, superstar. I hope he makes $1 trillion, dude.
And if not at this level, he definitely will at the next level for sure. But Chase, you talked about this offensive line, and I think one thing, we know they could run block, but the pass game just didn't seem to ever really take off. And I know people are going to circle the Booty 63-yard touchdown at Auburn, Aiden Armenta's big, 30, 40-yard touchdown against Jackson State. But that was really the exception. I can't really think of a time where we touched the 200-yard mark passing. Was that offensive line? Was that quarterback? Or what do you feel that was?
No, it's all receivers. I don't think that ULM had great receivers this year. I think that was probably, to me, watching these games was the weakest point of that offense. I don't think they were either big or they were fast. Like we really missed Tyrone Howell this year. I'll say that, because if you had Howell on this team, I mean, he would have caught for 2,000 yards because they couldn't stretch a field at all. Aiden really came a long way, right? I think early on, all he had to do was hand the ball off. And then as the year goes along, you can see he's got a little bit of something. He's got a little craftiness to him. He can make a few plays. He made some dumb mistakes, but the kid's 19 years old. What do you want from him? Like, he's going to make mistakes like that, especially early on in his career. I think we had a real problem with getting separation on anybody. I think that's why you saw us target tight ends a lot, right? Especially towards the end of the year when we started throwing the ball a lot, especially in the Lafayette game, kind of proved my point here. How many targets we had tight ends and how many drops we had from those receivers too. I don't think you had any real. I think you had some decent players, but I don't think you had any real talent that could, like you think about some of the other Sunbelt receivers, like the kid from Ross from Troy. Like, if you have a kid like that, I think we're having a different conversation. But I think we had one playmaker on offense, and we ran that playmaker into the ground. And, and I don't think we really had too many options past it.
Yeah, and you talk about that, and we'll jump to the defense here in a minute. I think probably one of the bigger players leaving that hurts. I mean, obviously Hardy, but I think James Jones, because he was a good number 2 running back.
Great change of pace,
really showed what he was capable of. I think it's a huge mistake for him to leave, knowing his background and knowing the struggles that he even had on the Bayou there. But if he feels it's not the right fit, it's not the right home for him, then definitely go where you're going to be happy. But I think that guy leaving really hurts this offense a little bit more than really anyone else.
Yeah, he was a great change of pace back, but they ended up, his usage went down throughout the year, and they don't use him in heavy downs. They use Bennett Galloway in heavy downs, which is a great power back who's a good 2-yard guy, and they felt like Ahmad could do more with those carries. And to be fair to Coach Vincent and his staff, they were right that he probably could. But if you're James, what's tough is you probably are pretty upset that happened, right? In the modern day, you have the ability to go out and try that portal and do what you can and see if you can't make you some money or see if you can't enter a better situation. But you knew you kind of, if you're a ULM fan, if you're a college football fan, you knew Ahmad Hardy was gone, right? Like, it wasn't really a question. You'd hope for the best as a ULM fan, but let's be honest, we've heard some pretty astounding figures of what he might get paid next year. And if you're James Jones, you walked into the best situation maybe in college football, because as coach kind of talked about in his recent press conference, he's like, I got 28 to 30 carries to give somebody who wants it.
Yeah.
And we're going to run you wild. And he's right. And he seems to reload a little bit in recruiting. And, I mean, you lose Carter Miller, who was a great part of that offensive line, but you still got Big Fish back, who is I'm admittedly a huge fan of and love watching him play. And you got McBroom back, who was kind of that 6th, 7th man, and he came in and did a great job. And when Carson was hurt, so I think, I don't know, man. I hate that for James, but at the same time, look, these are, you got to grow up quick in this modern. When I played at ULM, we kind of had a lot of boundaries, a lot of guidelines, right? And I wouldn't have made him a single dollar anywhere, so it doesn't really matter. But I think it's, like if you want to try it, go for it. I wish you would have stayed, and still, I guess he still technically could stay, although it'd probably get a little weird from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like whenever you give your 2-week notice at your job, right? Of course, they're going to counter maybe and try to move you to the corner office, give you a little bit more money, but then it's really going to be awkward that Monday after that conversation, right? So yeah, I think when you give the notice, I think that's it. You're done.
I love that analogy. It's like a 2-week notice. Like, hey, I'm quitting, but if I don't catch anything else, I might be back. We'll see. That's so. It's a weird. It's turned into something so weird, dude. And I just say weird because the animal of college football is so different.
And in just a short amount of time, it's really changed that much. But this year on the defense, I felt like it was very much Billy pulling in the first half of the season. Then he kind of disappeared in the second half of the season. But Carl Glass Jr. was a pretty consistent performer, tip to top in that season.
Yeah, him, Wydett, right? Wydett Williams turns out to be a dude, and I think Billy. I think they had some real struggles on defensive line as well. My biggest critiques about this team was receiving core and the defensive line. I think your safety had too many tackles, point blank. Okay, I know it's a weird defense. I know they can kind of get in some funky situations with some people in some sets, but your safety shouldn't have that many tackles. And, Trevor Randall ends up turning up and having a great year, but we missed that pass rush. And it's part of, obviously Billy Pullen's not the reason we didn't win 6, but that pass rush was eliminated after it seemed week 6, right? Because Billy goes on a tear and then kind of just falls off. People are all of a sudden running for like 7-8 yards a carry. I mean, you really couldn't stop the run game, which put people in really great passing downs. Or really, I mean, if we're being honest, offenses were efficient against us in the last 6 games, right? And you have decent secondary, you have decent linebackers, and then your D line just really couldn't close at the end of the year. And I don't know if you've heard, I've heard some rumblings about how Billy may have not been at 100%. I hope that's not true, but if it is, I mean, good for him for being a tough SOB, man, and getting out there and making a move, because he still had an impact every now and then. It just wasn't as consistent as it was in the first half of the year.
It was weird to say. He was the only player, I think, that had to sit out more plays from his helmet coming off than I've probably ever seen.
Like, get the guy new chin straps. Not that hard.
Yeah, and I remember even post-game at Marshall, he had like a chunk missing out of his nose and his chin.
Oh,
and I was
man.
like, Billy, what
he ain't
happened?
a good-looking dude.
Don't dog the guy. I mean,
he's not a great-looking guy. Good football player.
I know he would be across
guy.
The line from you, but don't dog the guy. All right? But I was like, Billy, what happened to you? Man, my helmet just won't stay on. So he got the mess beat out of him on the field physically and by his own helmet. So that's craziness. I really feel like, though, you kind of brought it up that, he was such a beast the first half of the season and then just disappeared the second half. That was really true for a lot of this team, because I feel like Mackenzie Ryan was a fantastic punter the first 6 weeks of the season.
You're so right, yeah.
And then the second half, he was effective. If he was punting from midfield, he could really pin people deep. But he just wasn't really getting the ball off very effectively. Now, I will say that Max Larson is probably the best kicker we've had in a while, because I didn't really cringe and hope that we were putting up 7 on every drive. The field goals got a little dicey, but you know, I still felt like it was a 50-50 shot on the field goals, but to me, it's big when you can't get that PAT consistent.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about special teams, right? And in general, in those first 6 games, your offense, defense, and special teams were consistently in a position to win, right? And if you think of football as a simple game of field position, we were winning field position in most aspects of the game. Most of the time of the game, we were winning that. And then all of a sudden your punter starts shanking a little bit. Your defense is in a bad spot. Your offense is getting long fields, right? Because you're starting to lose that tide is starting to wane for you. And I don't know why. Like, it doesn't, you had some real problems early. I'll say this, Tibbs. If we want to cover all 4, like, we'll go to coaching too. You had some real issues with operation times in the first 6 parts of the game, where you're taking 2 timeouts in the first quarter, you're taking 2 timeouts in the third quarter. You're putting yourself out of position to win games that are close. And you see it probably bit us at Marshall. You can see it probably bit us at Arkansas State. It was something that I know Vincent really worked on cleaning up, and I'm sure that having an OC, I hope that made him realize he needs an OC. And I know he said publicly that he needs an OC. But that really is the nail in the coffin for that, because, you just started losing those aspects of the games, the small things that you were really good at in the first 6 weeks. You really started losing them in the second.
But how much of that is, okay, we need to take a timeout because the play clock's down. We don't really know what we're doing on the field. Why not just delay a game? I mean, is the 5 yards really going to kill you at those key moments?
Yes, I mean, I'm of the belief that any backward yardage kills a drive. And listen, you got a good offense, right? We'll say you have a good run game. 5 yards back puts you into passing in most situations, right? And so to avoid that, you're thinking in the moment, well, if I'm on the 40-yard line, I'm not in field goal range yet, so I need to continue the forward momentum I have, but I'm not calling the play till 15 seconds left. And Brian Vincent has to do like 80%, 90% motion of his, tight ends and wide receivers and even running back from pistol to shotgun. I mean, he runs a really cool offense. He really does. A really interesting, really cool offense, but an offense that is the slowest offense I've legitimately ever seen in college football. And there's nothing wrong with that if you're calling it at 30 seconds. There's something wrong with that if you're calling it 15 seconds. And I would say you cannot take a penalty. Wherever you can avoid taking a penalty, you avoid taking the penalty and eat the consequences later. The problem is those consequences came at you this year later. They did come at you later.
Yeah, and I say that, but I mean, I felt like there were a lot of times where we shot ourselves in both of the feet and still had to try to run a marathon, that there were false starts, there were holdings, defensive holding, pass interference, roughing the kicker. I mean, anytime that I felt like we made a stop where they were looking at 4th and long, 3rd and long, we'd get the stop and somebody would do something stupid, hands to the face, offsides, whatever. And every time it led to points for the opponents.
Yeah. Or you're giving up large third downs. But seriously, like, I know you had a little bit of that early in the season, but it wasn't concerning yet. It only became concerning once you realized it was contributing to losing football games. And when that expectation changed after 6 weeks, you really start to narrow into things like the timeouts, the holding calls. I don't think there honestly, Tibbs, the Sun Belt refs this year, and it's a whole different tangent, okay, that I could go on. But the Sun Belt refs refused to call defensive pass interference either way. People were completely turned around, running through the player. No PIs called. I am admittedly, I turned my microphone off on the sidelines. Okay, this little insider baseball for you. They gave me a new mic this year because I needed to make myself not hot at all times, because I sit down there and scream, and usually at officials because they piss me off and they don't do things like call simple defensive pass interferences. And I guess I went off tangent, so I don't have a whole point to this, but I'm going to try to say that the whole point to this is that I think they were just exacerbated. I think they were a normal penalty team. They weren't super penalized. They weren't, 0 penalties. But I think it's just everything started stacking on each other against you there. Like the "we're back" meme.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like they were like, Twitter was going stupid after like the 7th game. Like, we're back. It's like, stop this, guys. We're way better than we have been. Promise you.
Hey, everything deserves a ULM mentioned.
Dude, the ULM mention is the greatest meme ever made. I love it. And then week 6, we were all on all those playoff rankings. Okay. Yeah. Well, not all of them. Okay. We were on some playoff rankings. Okay. And you just see ULM mentioned, just like, you'll even go on Reddit and see ULM mentioned. I love it so much. It's one of my favorite things.
So the best interview I did of the season, we were 2-0 headed to Texas. And of course the Texas media want to talk ULM. I seem to be the only guy they can find to talk to. So they're like, y'all are only picked for 2.5 wins, depending on what side of my interview. Man, 2.5 wins. That means you really got to get to 3 to be able to have it pay off. What about the Warhawks going against the Longhorns for win number 3? I said, we might not win another game. We'll finish the year 3-9, but what if 3 wins? And they were all like, if you come in and beat Texas, you're going to win more than 3 games. And I said, well, I was just playing along.
Yeah, that's funny. Dude, that's Texas. First off, not impressed with the stadium, if I'm being honest. I don't want to talk too much trash about them because they're very nice people, but press box wasn't super nice, man. Like thankfully I was on the field, and what a cool atmosphere with, everything they had going on there. The cannon, God, that cannon. I had called one of my high school best friends, goes to Texas grad. He's super proud about it. I called him. I said, what the hell is with y'all's cannon? And he was like, well, it goes off every time we score. I was like, no, it goes off so much. And he was like, dude, do you know how many points we scored on you? I was like,
and we almost covered.
Right, dude.
We almost covered.
Hey, we covered first half, right? First half cover. Second half did not. But very close.
So we look forward to 2025, Chase. Non-conference slate open up with FCS St. Francis, not the hospital there in Monroe.
Never heard of her.
Somewhere in Pennsylvania, I think.
Cool. Are we going? They're coming to us.
They're coming to the Malone House of Pain.
House of Pain. That is, I didn't say it obviously, but he said it first. It's old Chase Regian. I just want that on record.
Okay.
Is that not true?
I don't know. Probably.
He said it first to me on the field. He said, this is the House of Pain. Yeah. And nobody gave me credit for it. You didn't give me credit for it. Aaron didn't give me credit for it. Everybody ran for it. And I was like, you could have at least said an interview with Chase Regian. That'd be cool. But just offensive line, man, still not getting credit for shit. And it's cool.
2025. Open up against St. Francis. Week 2, going to Bama. Somewhere in there is a trip to Chicago to face the real Northwestern, not the one in Natchitoches, Louisiana. And then a trip out west to UTEP. Any of those games you kind of have circled going, yeah, that'll be a pretty good contest.
Well, considering I did know who St. Francis was, probably not them. I think Bama's still Bama. So UTEP, I think, will actually be a good game, though. That will be, when you start to think about like-minded conferences and like-minded programs, you need to be competitive. You need to beat teams like UTEP, who will randomly have really great players and really good seasons and randomly suck. But you need to be able to beat the curve of that inconsistencies and beat teams like UTEP. And what a great year for it is to happen to Bryant, because I think that's when you start. You really he needs to take a step here. And I think a good step would be beating UTEP. So
next year, do you feel that another 5-win season is still successful? Or do you feel that it has to be a 6-win, 7-win, or is it more of where do you finish in the standings to kind of dictate it being a success or failure season?
Dude, brutal question. Because like earlier this season, I thought, again, 3 wins, we're chilling, dude. Like we're on the up and up, dude. Like 4 wins, we're going crazy. 5 wins wasn't even a thought. And now that week 6, I don't want to say it hurt him. Okay, but it changed he changed expectations for himself, and I know he embraces that, and I hope he does. Vincent does, but no, I think next year your floor is 5-7. I think if you're 5-7, it's like it's consistency. You're not stoked about it, but you're not like, man, we suck again. You know what I mean? Like it's just kind of your expectation now. Oh, we got 5 wins. We all know we need 7 to make a bowl game. Any ULM fan knows that, right? That like 6 is just not going to get. It would have happened to us this year, right? Like we would have been first man out this year if we even won 6. You have to win 7, and so I think I don't want to call it disappointment, but it wouldn't be ecstatic about 5 and 7. There's no way you would be. You know what I mean? Like it's just.
I think it depends, honestly. What does that 5 and 7 mean? Is it another 5 and 1 and 6 straight, or is this a 5 and 7 and a missed PAT, a blocked PAT, field goals?
That's fair.
It depends on what that 5 and 7 looks like, because while that hurts, that's still part of the football and the lore of really trying to get yourself straight and over that hump. But I think that would still suck worse than being 6 and 6 and still sitting at home.
Yeah. That's fair.
So we also had a recruiting class, 13 signees coming in. We got some dudes. One of the dudes like on the defensive side, I really like defensive end Ethan Bailey out of Wetumpka, Alabama. This is a guy last year had 61 tackles, 9 sacks. Wetumpka, Alabama. It's right around Montgomery.
Wetumpka is an awful name. Sorry to cut you off mid go there. It's unprofessional.
No, I mean you just call it how you see it.
Yeah, it's a terrible name. So he's out of Wetumpka. Tell me about him. Ethan Bailey. Is that what you said?
Ethan Bailey, about a 6'3", 6'4" kid, like 230, 240. Good, tall, lanky defensive end. Really like watching this kid play on the film that I've seen of him. Did have an injury last year that kind of cut his season short and still put up those type of numbers of the 61 tackles and 9 sacks.
Oof.
Talked to him at the Louisiana Lafayette game, though. He's fully healthy, been playing, good to go. Said that, even upstairs, the mental aspect of it, he knows his leg is fully healed and there's no ill effects. So he's excited about being on the Bayou. When you look around at the signees, who really jumped out at you?
Well, I had seen they had a pair of O-linemen from Garden City Community College, and when for me it's tough because during the season I'm really not able to pay attention to any recruiting. I've got to prepare for the games like I do, which is to be honest, it's half-assed. But when I see some of these guys on sideline, some of these kids, you're just like, it's hard to tell who. Anyways, they're both 3 stars out of Garden City. Vincent's real big on them. He thinks they're really going to come in and do a job. You got to replace, Mickle and Carson, who had good years. And I think that it's a great, and now Miller. So you got to replace 3 offensive linemen. You really, again, feel like you already have 1 or 2 already there in the program. And so to come in for 2 guys and that seemed to be some dudes I'm excited about. That's AJ Vincent and Kaleem Crosswell. And what I don't want to do is start saying names on record, Tibbs, because I cannot say names for shit. I'm sorry. I got to stop cussing, but I can't say names for nothing, dude.
I can't either. I butcher everything and I forget names.
You said Wetumpka pretty good though, but I'm just big. I think it's a cop out for me to even say offensive linemen. So I'll say, excited about Fred Clark. I had seen Fred Clark on some Aaron stuff recently. Yeah, I love local kids. I am, it's been a challenge, this program, for a long time, but I had a few teammates there from West Monroe, and they were very, very good players. T. Kane's one of them. And if you remember T. Kane, great guy, really good at cutting hair, very short, very fast, very strong. And that's what I think of T. Kane. Anyways, and so I always love to see that. Carl Glass, same, like, you got to love the local stores. Hunter Herring. I mean, nowadays they're more prominent role players than I think what you've seen in the past, but I hope Fred Clark comes in and does the same thing at a place we really need some depth in.
So that's what we have for the initial show there, Chase. But I want to close out the show with you telling some stories from the trenches. Give us one of your best memories from your playing days with the Warhawks.
Yeah. I've got a story I tell a lot. and it is one of my favorites. And I'll try to be as illustrative as I can on audio. We were playing my redshirt sophomore season. We were playing University of Alabama. Now, the last time ULM had played Alabama was against Nick Saban, and we had beaten him, right? So we hear all this stuff about how Saban's like, yeah, it's the worst day of my life. We're going to kill these kids. Like he was ready for ULM to come back in there. And they had a defensive tackle by the name of Jonathan Allen. Turns out he's a pretty good football player and has been a good football player for a long time. And he was, they kind of ran a funky defense, but he was playing a 3-tech, and I was playing right tackle. I was maybe 4 weeks out of a knee surgery, maybe 3 or 4 weeks out of a knee surgery. I probably shouldn't have came back as fast as I did. It kind of ended up hurting me later in my career. But anyways, I was really fired up. This was my season, right? I was about to be all of a sudden I was the guy. I was I felt like the leader on the O-line, and Joe Tread, left tackle, had left. And so anyways, I was there. And in this probably second series of the game, because if you remember, Tibbs, that game got out of hand really fast. But in the second series of the game, we have a power right. I played right tackle. That means that my job is to crash the 3 technique. I've got to run to the left, and I'm sealing a gap there so the pulling guard can run behind me and kick out the end. Okay? Got me?
Yeah.
So that's Jonathan Allen. That's a tall task. It's a big guy, very strong. Obviously in NFL, I think he was a first or second round draft pick. So I give this kid everything I've got. Perfect technique, first step, second step strike, shoot my hands, throw my hips. I mean, I am on this guy, and I just pop him in his ear, right? And he does the slightest movement I've ever, like he just barely stands up, and he doesn't move at all. And the play runs for, 3 or 4 yards, and it's a good play. And he turns around and he looks at me, and he taps me on top of the helmet, and he says, "Hey man, you're pretty good." And I started swinging. I don't know why. I randomly started swinging. I said, "Screw you, dude. You suck. This team sucks. We're going to beat the crap out of you. You guys are awful." And I start talking all kinds of stuff I definitely can't say on record. And I just start cussing and flying. And Jonathan's like looking at me a little weird. And he asks the guy next to me, was Frank Sutton at the time. He goes, "Frank," or he didn't say Frank, but he was like, "Is this guy always like this?" And Frank pulls me away, and we kind of just walk away. And I was like, "I'm going to kill the guy. I'm going to kill him. So, he sucks so much." And I want to say publicly, he doesn't suck. He was very, very good. And the fact that I moved him an inch was an incredible feat in hindsight. But at the time, you're really pissed off when somebody gives you that little condescending tap on the head, like, "Oh, you're really great, guys." Yeah. That's my
it's a game of inches.
It's a it's a life of inches, man. And he just that guy, it turns out Hall of Fame offensive lineman can't move that guy, so I don't feel too bad anymore. But I think Alabama was one of those cool places you're able to say you got to play. Georgia, Kentucky, I'll save the Bud Dupree stories for next time.
I like it. So I'll tell my story that I remember hearing. Great ULM tight end Kevon Milton got moved outside to left tackle when he was playing for the Browns.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Got to go head-to-head against the West Virginia star, Barkevious Mingo.
Oof.
And he said there was a snap, and I went to hit him. He wasn't there. I thought he just backed up. No, he was already in the backfield hitting the dummy. And the coach proceeded to chew Milton's ass. And he's like, "Coach, he wasn't there. I can't hit what's not there."
Kevon Milton, man. What a guy. I hadn't heard that name in a long time.
Biggest shoes I've probably ever seen. That dude has like 18, 19 size shoes.
Yeah. Well, now that you said Kevon, I'll tell you another story. Is I walked into a good friend of mine and roommate of mine was Harley Ciano. And Harley and Kevon were good friends, right, in the same tight end room. And Harley walks up and he was like, "Hey, Chase, this is Kevon." And I was like, "Hey, dude, big fan. Like, I've seen what you're doing now and the way you played here. Like, you're really good." He was like, "Yeah, dude. Do you know D?" And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah, you know D, right?" And I was like, "I don't know who D is." Like, "D's nuts." And that's the only conversation I've ever had with Kevon Milton. It's the only words he's ever talked because I just was like, and just walked away because what do you say back to that? Yeah, great guy, though. Great guy. From what I hear, he's an awesome guy.
What a great way to end the show. So, Chase, it was so much fun. We'll do it again next week when we maybe break down a little bit more of the recruiting class, talk a little basketball, maybe preview a little bit of baseball, softball, and see what else happens from there.
Let's do it. See you next week, Bub.